The P3/2 classroom was never quiet, but this morning was unusually noisy. It was as if everyone knew an opportunity was about to come, an opportunity to become someone, even though they didn't yet know what they had to do. Teacher Molly stood at the front of the room, lightly tapping her ruler on the desk. Teacher Molly: "Students, next week we will have an election for class president. Anyone who wants to run, raise your hand." Children: "Me! I will. Teacher, let me speak first." Hands were raised swiftly, as if the body responded instead of the mind. The words, "I want to be," were clearly audible, but the words, "what I want to do," were so soft they were barely heard. One boy: "If I get to be, I won't have to do homework on Fridays." Another girl: "I'll buy snacks every day." Yet another child: "The teacher will definitely be kinder." Taidy didn't raise her hand. She looked down at the pencil in her hand. It was getting shorter and shorter from being sharpened and reused, like a promise that's been repeated. In the adult world, a silent question lingered in her heart. If promises were that easy, why is the adult world still so endlessly chaotic? The schoolyard has transformed. From a place where people used to play, it has become an advertising space. Brightly colored posters cover the fence. The smiles on the signs are exaggerated. The slogans are short, easy to read, and memorable. It's as if they were designed to leave no one thinking too long. A student: "For friends, for happiness, for the future." Another voice: "Choose me and every day will be better." Taidy slowly read each sign. She wasn't looking at them like advertisements, but like reading a book, where the meaning should be understood, not just the cover. She noticed something. None of the signs mentioned duty, only rights, happiness, and obligation. Namfon, Tidy's best friend, walked over and whispered, "Don't overthink it, Tidy. Just choose the person who gives out the most gifts. They'll have to keep their word anyway." Tidy turned to look at her friend. "What if they can't?" Namfon shrugged. "Then we can change it next year." That sentence was soft, but it weighed heavily on Tidy's mind all day. Choosing because you get gifts, is that really a choice? Or is it just a temporary exchange, without any responsibility for the choice? That night, Tidy placed a blank piece of paper on the table. The small lamp illuminated a vast amount of empty space, an unhurried emptiness, uncompressed, but waiting for someone to think before writing. She wrote the heading, "If we were class president," and then stopped. The hand holding the pencil didn't move. No flashy promises, no giveaways, no words to elicit applause. Just one question, written in small print in the middle of the page, but heavy enough to silence the entire page. Tai murmured softly, "If we don't think before we speak, why speak at all?" Mom walked over silently and immediately began reading without saying a word. Mom, soft voice: "You know, Tidy, the world doesn't lack eloquent speakers. The world lacks people who dare to think before they speak." Tidy looked up. Tidy: "But what if the person who thinks doesn't win?" Mom smiled faintly. "At least they won't lose to themselves." Mon didn't point out what to write. She didn't tell her what kind of promise to make. But she left one answer in the air, an answer that didn't help her win against anyone, but it helped her not get lost in her own heart. And that night, Tidy's paper remains faithfully vacant. The speaking day arrived. The classroom was no longer just a place to learn. It had become a stage. The cheers were louder than on school days. It was as if whoever spoke better was more important. "Yay! Speak! Say it again!" Each candidate took the stage to speak. Jokes were thrown in. Promises were made with confidence. The applause was steady. Even though no one listened to the end, because what people were listening to wasn't the truth, but the good feeling of the moment. If I get elected, we won't have homework on Fridays, we'll have treats every week, and the teachers will have to listen to us. Children, wow, great! Loud cheers erupted. When it was Taidy's turn, there was no cheering, no one prepared to applaud. She spoke slowly and briefly. If we choose someone because they are good at talking, we may only hear their words but never see their actions. Her words were short, but they left a long silence. The classroom was silent, not because everyone understood, but because they were unaccustomed to the silence. And then a soft laugh arose, like a defense mechanism of those who didn't want to think. The result came out quickly, faster than many could have imagined. Beam won decisively. Cheers erupted in the room. Friends rushed in to pat him on the back as if this victory belonged to everyone at once. Kids, Beam won! Yay! That was awesome! It's okay, Taidy. The voice faded into the cheers. Taidy got a low score, so low that hardly anyone mentioned it. There were no genuine words of comfort. No questions were asked about what she was thinking. It was as if losing was something better kept quiet about. Taidy murmuring softly, "They get happy so quickly, really." She wasn't upset, but she noticed that everyone was quick to rejoice and quick to forget. Like responsibility that is passed around, but never stays with anyone long enough to be called their own. A month has passed. The snacks are gone. The homework remains the same. Fridays are no different from any other. Some promises haven't been broken, they just didn't last long enough to become reality. There's homework again today. Didn't you say Fridays would be special? It's not my fault. The teacher wouldn't allow it. There are too many rules. You guys are expecting too much. But you promised. Beam starts to get tired, starts to get frustrated, starts to blame the teacher, blames the rules, blames his friends for expecting too much. But nobody says, we chose him ourselves, because acceptance is often harder than complaining. Taidy watched it all, silent like the first day. She didn't say, "I told you," because she knew that words that come late are rarely heard, especially a truth that everyone was involved in, but no one wanted to claim it as their own. Teacher Molly placed a small wooden box in front of the classroom. It didn't look special, but the rules were different. This time, there was no need to win. There was only the need to be honest with one's own thoughts. Teacher Molly: this is a suggestion box. Don't write your name. Write anything, but write what you think. A few days later, a piece of paper was read aloud. I want to know why, during the election, no one told me the truth. The room fell silent, not because they were afraid, but because everyone knew whose handwriting it was. And that question wasn't just directed at one person, but at everyone who had ever voted, without thinking too far ahead. Teacher Malley reading another sheet. If you lack self-control, life will be full of choices, but those choices will be meaningless. Beam lowered his head, not out of shame, but because he had just thought about it for the first time. And in the classroom that day, there was no cheering, no blaming anyone, only silence, which began to do its job, making everyone listen to themselves. It's the end of the term. Next year, who wants to run for class president again? The teacher asked the same question, in the same classroom, but the atmosphere was different. This time, no one raised their hand immediately. The children looked at each other, as if weighing something they had never weighed before. That was the meaning of leadership. The silence in the room wasn't empty. Instead, it was filled with thoughts. Some were beginning to understand that raising a hand might be easier than taking responsibility for the consequences, and that was growth without applause. One child whispering, "If we vote, do we really have to do it?" Tidy picked up another blank piece of paper. She didn't write anything, not because she didn't have an answer, but because she knew that a valuable answer wasn't the fastest one, but the one that came after careful consideration before choosing. The story ended there, without a winner, without a loser. Only a question lingered in the reader's mind. In our next choice, will we stop and think long enough? Perhaps not rushing into a choice might be one answer. This novel doesn't ask who should win, but it asks us, do we choose consciously or simply choose to avoid thinking? Because without restraint, life may be full of choices, but empty of its meaning. And sometimes, an 8-year-old girl may see something important that adult society chooses not to see. Not because she's smarter, but because she dares to pause and think before choosing.